Hello friends, my name is Steve Guttenberg and I am the Audiophiliac, and today's show is a follow-up interview with one of my favorite audio people, favorite speaker designers, Devin Turnbull. Now, he participated in a show, in an art show, at a prestigious gallery here in New York City, the Listen Gallery, where he put together an entire high-end audio system. Now, the show itself that he was in was a sculpture show. And I guess they requested his participation because his work is, let's say, sculptural. But anyway, this was a working system. It wasn't just there to be looked at. It played music, and it played music incredibly well. I went many times over the 5 weeks the show was open, and I went back to do this follow-up interview to talk to Devin about what it was like, what that experience was like to be in the show, but mostly about what the people who sat there in the room listening to music, what that was like. What was that vibe like in that room? Anyway, this is me talking to Devin Turnbull. So here's the question to start, though. Who are the people? Who are these people that come here to this room and listen? Listen at the Listen Gallery, but I still am mystified by how you do this. How did this even happen? I mean, the whole thing, I'm fascinated by that, but just this aspect. I've been here 4 times, and people sit and listen without talking.
For
That's not
long
normal.
periods of time, and you know, I can't say it's not like I did it. It's not like I was like, I'm going to capture like a massive amount of, I mean, whatever, it's massive is a relative term, but I would say this is by anyone's standards I've spoken to, it's been, you know, wildly popular. The opening, I was told there were like almost 750 people here. You saw that. You saw the crowd.
I was here. Oh, it was
There's a lot of people. I was totally unprepared for that. So I guess, you know, I would have to speculate that that we did something right in here that makes people feel like they can let their guard down and just have an enjoyable experience.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing. Too bad you can't bottle it. And so here you go. Here's how to do it. But when you've talked to them, you walk outside this room and you talk to them. What kind of things do they say?
I'll see a lot of like older men come in with a different expression than like younger people who are having their first, who are having like a really new experience.
Oh, like what's the difference?
Well, you know, some of these guys come in, or people, they're not necessarily men, they come in and they're like, they look puzzled. They don't look just enamored and excited. They look kind of confused.
What is this? That's what
and the
thinking,
first
right?
question, then they'll sit down with a, you know, furred. They'll look a little bit like, kind of just like, not upset, but just confused.
Yeah.
And so I immediately think, for the first couple days, oh, this guy is one of 2 people. He's either an audio industry person who's kind of like bothered by this like unorthodox presentation of audio equipment, or type of audio equipment, right? It can be, he could be either of those 2 things, right? Okay. He could either just think, you know, this environment is foreign to me and I'm not comfortable here. Or he could be like, oh, you know, tubes.
Right.
This guy's stupid.
Right.
Because as you know well, there are like plenty of those guys out there. They're very dogmatic in what they think is valid in terms of audio equipment. You know, oh, vinyl. These guys just must be nostalgic. Like, these guys aren't real audiophiles. They listen to records, right? These people are out there. Right. So he's either a grumpy audio guy, or he's a grumpy art world guy who's comes in and is like, is this art? You know, I came here to see art. And so I would field these questions, and it usually starts with, what is this? And are you the creator of this stuff, and what are you? Sure. But anyway, I try to figure out how to answer that question, and I pretty quickly realized that it doesn't matter which one they are. They both want to hear the same thing.
Which is?
that this is authentic. They don't want to hear okay, one thing they definitely don't want to hear is that like I'm a visual artist who was just like, I'm going to make a stereo system, which I'm not.
A visual artist.
Yes, this isn't something that I conceptualized by like, I want to make something that looks cool and plays music. I think what they both want to hear is that this is truly form follows function, and that there's nothing fake about it, which I can wholeheartedly say is the case. Definitely what they don't want to hear is that there's like a Class D amp on the bottom side of this table, and that the record player is actually just streaming from my phone, and that there's a Sonos speaker hidden behind the horn. You know what I'm saying? Like, and once they kind of like start to hear me talk about this work and my approach to it and how I wound up here, I think it's clear to them that like it's honest.
That's good. So whether they're the art type or the grumpy old audio guy, they're satisfied with that explanation. Pretty much.
Yeah, at the
I'm
very
sure it
least.
depends on the
At the
person.
very least, yeah. I mean, I would say every one of those conversations, anyone that started with that, by the time they leave, they're saying like, "Thank you so much. I think this work is really special." The one guy in particular, who I was sure he was like a grumpy old audio guy. I asked him, in the end, I finally just asked him, like, can I ask you like where you're coming from in asking these questions? Like, and he said, I'm a retired museum director. I was the director of a museum for a long time. And then at the end of the conversation, he said, I am retired, but if I was still a museum, actually he told me a good story. He said, I have this recurring dream that I wake up and it's like the homework. I don't know what, you show up to school and there's a final for a class you didn't realize that you were taking and you haven't studied for it.
Okay.
He has that dream with exhibitions. Every once in a while he wakes up and he's like, I don't know what the next show is going to be, and it opens in a week. And it was really sweet what he said. He said, if I had that experience in real life tomorrow, you'd be the first person I call.
Oh, that's nice.
It was so sweet.
That was great.
But yeah, I'd say all those conversations, just with a little bit of conversation, they all end in like a mutual gratitude.
That's great. So those are the old people, mostly male. So, because the thing that I was struck, most of the time I was here, and certainly on that opening night, the people coming were pretty split evenly, men and women.
Yeah, it's funny, like the gallery, so I think the same thing. I'm surprised how many, no, I'm not surprised. I guess I'd be surprised if it weren't. But, we have this.
I am surprised.
We have this, I mean, yes, I do know that it's obvious that the market for high-end audio, boutique audio, specialty audio is, the vast majority of the market is male, and a lot of women are coming here and having great experiences. Reality check though, the gallery did comment on how male the visitorship of this show is, so it's all about perspective.
Okay.
From our perspective, it's extremely diverse.
Right.
It's extremely gender diverse.
Right.
But it's, I would say it's, a lot of couples come and stay for a long time.
And women by themselves.
Groups of women come by themselves, absolutely, yeah. And groups of women come in, and I haven't had a chance to investigate that. Like, how did you, what brought you here? But I have a lot of my, a lot of the visitors are just people that love music. And that is not a gender biased field, music appreciation. So yeah, I guess what I'm kind of getting at is I think that like there's a certain aspect of this which is like a music listening experience first and foremost. I'm not trying to sell anyone anything here, and that's an important point. But I will say that I had a slip up today, or this my age, I would say like late 30s, early 40s woman, stylish woman was here, and I saw her outside. I was outside there when she came out, and she came over to me and she's saying something about, she had a mask on, and she was talking, and it's hard to hear people in the gallery because there's so much sound bouncing around the room. And I was like, I thought she was saying, can I bring my kids? And I was like, I said to her, like, yeah, kids are allowed. And she goes, no, when are you going to restock the audio kits? She's like, wants to order the speaker kit and wants to build her own speakers. So, you know, I mean, it's like, it's all over the place. I guess the thing that's the most surprising to me about this is how long, I mean, all right, here are the, like, I guess, successful, like, observations. People don't talk. I've never had to ask anyone not to talk in here.
That is amazing.
No one talks in here. People
and they
will
don't look
whisper,
at their phone.
and people generally don't look at their phones. You know, I've been here for 5 weeks, and I have like a business to run and a life to live, and I have to have my phone out from time to time. And I don't even, if I have my phone out, it doesn't even start like, or sometimes I even have to have my laptop out, and it doesn't turn into like an internet cafe. People aren't like, oh, I'm going to come work here, you know? People understand, and I think that part of that is that this is a gallery. People understand this is not a place to talk. For whatever it is, people get it. They walk in here and they are immediately quiet. So I think that that's partly the context of the gallery. The thing that's really surprising to me is that people stay here for hours. To the point where, like, you know, sometimes, because we've been programmatic, like, you know, we had our Blue Note week that was all classic jazz. We had our Deutsche Grammophon week that was all classical music and neoclassical music. We had our, last week wound up being kind of a spiritual jazz week. And, you know, I'll have...
And now it's the Brian Eno.
And now it's the Brian Eno closer.
Yeah.
And I'll have like a selection of a dozen, 20, maybe 20 records on a given week to play. But people stay for long enough that I have to start worrying about repeating records. Because I'm looking and I'm like, this guy's been here for like 3 or 4 hours. I can't remember what I played. Yeah, I've heard all these records so many times this week. I can't remember if this is, so I have to like ask sometimes. And there are a lot of people who come back. There are several people who come several times a week.
That's something.
And they do not conform to a single age, gender, race, any of it.
Audiophile, not audiophile.
Audiophile, non-audiophile. I mean, I would say if you've come here, if you've spent a dozen or more hours a week for multiple weeks here, I would say you're hopefully an audiophile by the time.
Or they just like your
over.
music choices. Yeah.
I mean, but it's not just the music choices. They can go home and keep listening to the music.
Right.
You know,
so it's about the sound, this thing.
it's about the whole experience.
True.
You know, I mean, I was saying that obviously, like, this Blue Note intensive week is very conducive to like the audiophile experience, right? I mean, a lot of those records are the same records you'd hear in a show, in a showroom, whatever it is. I'm hoping that this opens up like a new kind of chapter for me, for this project, you know, for myself, my team, people that are interested in hearing and experiencing more of this, that this opens like a new chapter of, really just a new channel for this output that, you know, until now, I built my home listening room, and I think one of the reasons I've gained so much visibility, I guess you could say, is that, you know, people enjoy watching my listening room evolve, and they like the idea of this really intentional space for listening to music. But it's been pretty private, you know, it's in my home. I can't really share it with a lot of people. And then I take what I learn working in this really controlled environment, which is very personal and private, and I apply it to the work that I get commissioned to do. Somebody like Mark Ronson I love Mark, but he also represents an important like customer to me. He's like he's got an incredibly well-trained ear. You know, like anyone that would argue against that would be crazy. He has a dozen Grammys and Academy Award and all these things. He's many times over an award-winning music producer. Owns a studio, spends his whole life with music. Came over to my place. He has a hi-fi system. You know, he had a whatever. I don't want to badmouth the brands that he had, but he had a kind of a mid-level audiophile system at home. So there's like someone like that who's like an experienced audio person who listens to a different kind of music equipment and then is turned on by like triodes, high efficiency, classic Alnico drivers, traditional type of horn-loaded or bass reflex cabinet. Or, and Mark, a lot of his music production also references a similar era of work of music to the kind of technology that I reference as well. So it's like very harmonious. Mm. So anyway, yes, I have some home audio customers. That stuff is great. A lot of my work that's commissioned goes into commercial spaces, and most of that is my taking what I learn in my listening room and applying it to,
clubs,
nightclubs, bars, restaurants, cafes, retail stores, like places that are accessible by the public. But there's something else going on always in that scenario. The places where generally people who want to experience my work, either the work is very intentional and private and not accessible, or it's, there's clanking cups, or there's other kind of commerce going on in those spaces. It's really hard to have like a very intentional listening experience. Well, I guess, I think you asked what's next, and I don't know exactly what's next yet.
So you don't have offers for another venue?
We're talking to a bunch of people.
Okay.
We're hoping that there are new venues soon, but my hope is that this opens up like a new channel where like this specific room, it has more publicly accessible. We're trying to find homes for this stuff that are going to be this.
Oh, really?
That won't be, it'd be much easier to sell this to a brand that wants to like merchandise around it. That would be the easiest way to sell this. Mm-hmm. I already do that. I'll build you something if that's what you want. But this is a special system because it's so handmade.
But you didn't come here with the intention of selling it, or did you? Pieces of it?
Eventually I need to get my money back out of this thing, to be straightforward. I don't intend to own this forever.
Okay.
So a brand would be the easiest place to sell it. Then like a collector would be the next. But we're hoping that we can find somewhere like other galleries and or museums that will be interested in. It's uncharted territory because it's like, what is this? Is this from far away, you try and explain what this is, and I think like a museum director might be like, well, we have like a place that people can listen to music, but this is not a place to listen to music. This is like a complete experience, and the listening experience and the hardware is the work. I definitely look forward to whatever the future of this is, whether or not there are more of these and however many more people get to experience it. I really look forward to like in 10 years hearing people's recounting of like what this was and how they discovered it, and because I think back to we're in New York City. This is really only possible in a city like New York. There are only a handful of places in the world that like this could happen. Mm-hmm. And I think back to experiences from my childhood or like my teenage years of like discovering things in New York. obscure record stores. It was a thing for me. Things related to like art and fashion that were like pre-internet, pre-social media. It was like you just had to find this thing. Someone had to tell you about it, and you had to find it.
Right.
Obviously, this is not that time, but I feel like somehow we've captured a little bit of that just by this thing being so, I don't know, random. Like, what is this?
Unexpected. No one could see this coming.
You ask me, and I'll ask you right back. I don't know what this is, And I think that hopefully people will have this experience in like 10 years. They'll be like, dude, I just went to this, like, I heard about this thing, or I was totally aware of it, but I wasn't prepared because I've seen a lot of people, they just have like a look of shock when they come in here. So like some people just like, but there's sometimes, Yale, who you interviewed recently from the Walkabout, was here and did a thing. He said he was nervous at first because he said, when I worked in record stores, I got very good at like putting on a record and like looking at the people and knowing I could read exactly what they thought of the record. As soon as I put it on, you could tell, like there's that scene in High Fidelity, the movie, where he's like, I will now sell 5 copies of the Beta Band. And yeah, like, you get good at reading the room, and you're like, I'm going to sell a bunch of these records, watch this. And you can tell immediately, like, people are going to go and grab this and they're going to come and buy it. And he's like, I didn't get that vibe the first time, like the first few, the beginning of the first track. And I was like, that's interesting. I mean, overall it was a super positive experience, but he said he was a little bit like at first. And I said, I think sometimes I know what you're talking about. Sometimes people who wind up staying here for a very long time and like talk to me at length about what a great experience it was, their first reaction isn't just like, tap their, this is nice, I like this. They're a little bit shocked by the experience. There's a culture, like there's like a surprise, because the sound is so big compared to what most people are used to hearing. I mean, if there's one thing that I can just objectively say about like this kind of sound system, is it's extremely immersive, and it's a huge sound compared to a lot of what people are used to in various ways.
Sure.
And people are just like surprised, I think.
Yeah. Surprise.
Surprise.
That's good. Surprise people. The shock of the new. Fantastic. Devin, you've done it again.
Thank you, Steve.
Oh my Lord. This is fantastic. There'll be more, I'm sure.
Thanks.
See you next time.